think doing it together could be fun because then we can start to argue if we. Arguing's always fun.
Hello and welcome to Board Game Bonkers. I'm Jay Sears and this is Under the Meeple show. And today we have two very special guests from a podcast show. But I won't spoil that and let them introduce themselves. So welcome both.
Hey, Jay.
Hello.
We are Christina.
And I'm Rob.
From Blue Peg, Pink Peg.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Why don't you tell everyone a little bit about that show and what to expect so others may be able to find it?
So we are a board game podcast about board games, relationships, and the interaction between the two. So we talk about games we've played with our friends, family, and anyone else who sit down at the table with us. And then we also do a deep dive review, talk about some news in the industry. And yeah, we've been around for a while.
10 years or so. Forever.
Fantastic. Well, what we'll do, we'll put the link in the description down below so people can check that out.
Yeah.
It's certainly worth checking out. I've certainly listened to a couple and it's great fun. So, yeah, I highly recommend it. So, for those who are not familiar with what this is all about, perhaps you've just clicked on for, well, what's this all about? Well, we'll be presenting 10 questions to our guests. We're going to go back and forth because we have two guests with Christina and Rob. So, they'll be having 5 questions each. And when we're finished with those 10 questions, we'll move them to the side. Now, this is not a quiz, it's a Q&A, but with a twist. And so what's the twist? Well, we'll be throwing out questions from this bowl. So our guests have no idea what the questions will be, and I have no idea which questions will be coming out. So when you finish all those 10 questions, any future guests coming on will have 10 completely new, unique questions. So we started off with 120. So as you can see, we're actually thinning down the questions. So hopefully we'll have actually a few fluffy questions come out today because we've had quite a few tough ones in the past. So let's see.
Oh boy.
Well, I guess Brian with the Meeple, or will they be a little bit nervous? Well, we're about to find out as we present 10 questions to our guests. So are we ready?
Yeah.
I think so.
Fingers crossed.
Fantastic. So let's dive into our first question. Okay. Right, this is quite an interesting one. So if you had to describe, so I'm going to ask Christina this first, okay? So if you had to describe your feelings right now about the board game industry as an amusement park ride, what ride are you on?
Oh boy, I would say that currently the state of the board game industry is a little bit like the teacups at the amusement park. So you get on, it's fantastic, everybody's smiling, having a good time.
Having a blast.
And then it starts to pick up and get a little crazy, and then all you're doing is just like holding on for dear life. I feel at times there are things that happen in our industry that are just like, what is happening? I don't want to be on this ride anymore.
But if you do it in moderation, so like the teacups, you can spin yourself. Sometimes you get in there, some kids, this is the first time they've ever been on a teacup ride. They're, whoa, going really super fast. Everybody's getting kind of sick. But in moderation, you spin it around. Oh, okay, I'll buy this board game. That Kickstarter looks fun. It's a pleasurable sensation.
Yeah. But currently there's a lot happening. And so I think at times it can be a little overwhelming.
Right.
Yeah, and I certainly think, certainly for new people coming into the industry, it can be overwhelming, particularly with the number of games that come out as well, and the changes over the last few years and where we are now and what's going on, as well as, companies folding, as well as companies swallowing up smaller companies, and, the Kickstarter, GameFound, all these options and choices and what's going on can be extremely overwhelming.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes in the future and see what the board game industry is like. But I'm sure that's a fun ride for many people. And which favourite ride. So it'd be interesting to see what others think as well. What ride will they pick? So comments down below. So let's move on to question number 2. So that's
question number 2.
Let's see what comes out. Right. Okay. Wow. This is quite an interesting one. What would there be? This one coming out, Rob. So what do you dislike most about the board game industry?
Oh, what do you dislike the most?
Oh boy, what do I dislike the most about the board gaming industry? Um, hmm. I'm gonna say the options, right? I work a full-time job. I only have so much disposable income. And so I have to kind of pick and choose, especially doing Blue Peg, Pink Peg. We do get a lot of games for review copies and stuff like that. But I also likes what I likes. And if I see, like, I'm a big fan of legacy games. I'm a big fan of campaign games. But I've only got so much money to go around. So, you hear that Ticket to Ride Legacy's coming out, $120 US dollars. Woo! But then that means I can't buy something else. And so there's a little bit of, oh, I want to get everything, but I can't. And then I feel bad when I don't get this one thing, or I get this thing. I'm like, is this a good purchase? Like, and so there's just a lot of options. So if, you like board games, a lot of people I've mentioned, like, coming into the industry and they're like, whoa, there's more games than just Monopoly out there. And then when they're exposed to that, they start buying a bunch of stuff. And then at one point it's like, I don't have enough money to get all the things I want. So it's that feeling that I have that I want to get more stuff, but I can't. So the options, I guess, the how big the industry is and how much stuff that's out there.
Yeah, certainly. And there's also that concept, that fear of missing out as well, isn't it? That I want to get it all. And I think there's that fear of missing out. I think what people forget sometimes is a lot of games actually get re-released and reprinted into different editions. So I think sometimes it's safe to sometimes keep some of your money in your pocket for the essentials.
Right.
Just do a bit of research. There's lots of great content on YouTube as well with reviews you can check out for those who are not familiar with what's actually in the industry and perhaps they're new. And there's lots of channels about some fantastic entry-level games. So it's certainly worth checking those out first before dipping into that pocket.
Yeah.
I know that some of our listeners, because we all have, on Blue Peg, Pink Peg, we all have different views of what we like. And so some of our listeners were like, everything Christina likes, I buy, because we have the same taste. So you bring up a good point. Find someone, a reviewer or something, when they review a game, if they sound like, that's the kind of stuff I'd like, listen to that content creator to kind of get through all the noise that's out there.
Yeah, and I suppose it's important to perhaps listen to a few as well, because one opinion, well, like you say, will sway differently to another. So
Sure.
Because someone doesn't like it doesn't mean you won't like it. So check out a few reviews, definitely.
Right.
Let's move on to our third question.
Oh boy.
Oh, Christina, what have we got here?
I don't know.
Okay. Well, this is interesting. Okay, so what's been the most important game mechanism or mechanic, as some like to call it, brown apple, green apple, it's all the same to me, over the past 10 years? So what do you think has been the most iconic one?
I think in the last 10 years, and what if I say a mechanic that was before 10 years ago?
Well, it's just important now.
Yeah.
Like maybe it's escalated.
I think any game that is able to incorporate what do you call it when you draft cards but then you can change them over time, like
card crafting system. That's a good
systems.
answer. Yeah.
John
D. Clare has really refined that.
Yeah, so I think any game that's able to incorporate card crafting. I want to say drafting. Right. That's not right. Card crafting has the potential to make that game live much longer, because there's so many new things you can do with that type of mechanic that you can add expansions to, and it can keep the life of the game living past its original production. So card crafting mechanic.
And that is definitely a new mechanic and a fun one. Yeah, that's a good answer.
Yeah, there's different kind of, I suppose, sway concepts of that. So you got your card kind of layering, haven't you, and the different ways of doing that. And it's certainly, we've seen quite a few kind of modern games that are incorporating that into the mechanism of how the games function. Mm-hmm. And it can seem a little bit fiddly to some people, but if you do it right and you do it right, it can work extremely well.
Well, and I think too, when the next time you pull that game out, you know, there are a lot of games where when you craft new cards, those are permanent new cards in the game. And so those tell a story the next time you play around. And I think that's really fun. It's almost like a living thing.
Yeah, I can't let this question go without giving a nod to Legacy.
Oh,
I know this is your question,
yeah, it's my
but
question.
Legacy, oh, I love that mechanic. I'm such a sucker for Legacy games.
Yeah, Legacy games, and they are an amazing, engrossing thematic experience dipping into a Legacy game, isn't it? And the amount of work it must go into them, it must be absolutely crazy, the amount of hours and commitment to be making a Legacy game. But to get that end product and have that euphoric, epic experience is just amazing.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yep.
Fantastic. So let's move on to number 4. So
I feel like we're doing pretty good.
There's no
quiz.
wrong
I
answer.
know.
You likes what you likes.
That's the fun about it. Yeah, absolutely. So what is one particular aspect of a board game, your favorite board game, that you would change? So any part of a board game that you love so much, it could be a rule, it could be a slight mechanism that doesn't quite work the way you want it to work, any particular element within a game that you love that you would change.
So on the show, I talk a lot about table presence. You're walking around a convention, you see someone playing a game, and you walk away from it, a terrific game, because it looks like garbage, or it's just
not appealing.
It's not appealing, right? Like you look at it and there's just a bunch of cubes on a board, and it's very like just blah colors. And you know, as a gamer, we've played a lot of games and we've found a lot of gems that we've overlooked. But you know, let's say a game that I really, really enjoy, that maybe I would have enjoyed quicker or sooner if I had been sort of drawn to it, attracted to it. So I can't think of a game right off the bat. We'll say the majority of Stefan Feld's games. He is my favorite designer. I love Stefan Feld, but of a lot of his games, you look at it and you're like, yawn, I'll pass. But if you could up some of that artwork, if you could up some of the presence of the game, I would like to bring that out more. I'd like to show people, and it's easier for me to use to show people, like, I love Stefan Feld, but I'm going to show you this game that's just a bunch of cubes, like the original Macau. Like I know Queen Games just redid it, but the original Macau is just mountains of cubes. No one looks at that and they're like, I'm going to pass. But now the artwork's a little bit. That's why I'm excited about the new reprint of Castles of Burgundy. Like they're really upping up the presence, the components of it. So I guess the one element would be some of Feld's games, the art and the table presence.
Yeah, it's a good point. I remember when I first got into gaming, I was all about the mechanisms, and then when I grew into it, it was more about, well, I need the art to appeal to me, because I need to start feeling more of the theme and being engrossed by it. But one game in particular that kind of comes out to me is Laws of Waterdeep. They use cube represent all these people, and I'm thinking, well, how can a wizard be a cube? It just, I feel like I'm picking some bricks up. So I, for one, would want to more pick that game up and actually get hold of those actually wizard pieces that look like I'm actually recruiting people to go on my quest, and not actually look like I'm actually purchasing some goods. So yeah, it's a good point there, absolutely, and that makes a big difference, doesn't it? That artistic feel and the look of a game, that presence, it really drags you into that thematic experience.
Yeah, I just, you know, when you see a game on the table, that's your first impression. And if you want the way your game looks to be your first impression, you might as well make it the best impression you can, because otherwise people are going to assume and make up their own story in their head of what that game is like just by the way it looks. So
also a sucker for artwork on cards. Like if you're using like the same, this is a picture of a lady and she's doing a thing, and that's on every card. If you were to change it up, I don't know, artwork's not cheap. Like I know that. So it's just like, you know, you have to find a balance. But if you got a lot of amazing art, you got a lot of cool components, it'll make a good first impression.
Absolutely, and you're right. There's a cost element to it, and it's getting that balance, isn't it? Definitely. Okay, so let's move on to number 5.
Halfway there almost.
Yeah. Right. So, what's your next adventure in your board game career. So as a content creator, your next step.
Yeah, so Rob mentioned we've been around for 10 years, and
Long years.
maybe about 2 years into it, we created our Patreon, which helps fund the show and allows us to put out the content that we do. But it's been a while since we've upgraded our Patreon. And so this year we actually started planning out our new Patreon campaign. So we're getting ready to launch a new website,
a new video,
a new Patreon campaign, readjust our levels and the things our listeners and our Patreons are giving to us. So we're really just looking at revamping our ability to put out more content in a way that our listeners and supporters align with. And it's a little more timely. We have new hosts on the show, and so we just need to be a little more relevant than we were 10 years ago.
Another adventure that we're going to be going on this year.
Yeah.
Christine and I are celebrating our 15-year anniversary this year. 15's right.
Yes.
Okay, great. And we're going to go to Essen. We're going to Essen, and we're going to spend some time there for our 15-year anniversary. So that's another adventure as a podcast and as a couple we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I'm sure you have an amazing time. It's always great going to conventions and meeting new people and seeing new games out there. So congratulations both. So on to our next question. So number 6. Oh, we got a few stuck here. There we go. Swimming in the bowl. Right, okay. So is there one, I suppose we'll pitch this towards content creators, and we can see this as both ways, okay? Either game designers, content creators, or even publishers. So either way you want to answer this, perfectly fine. So is there one strategy or tactic you think is underrated in the board game industry? So we think, you can think about it as the content creators and what they create, or you could think about it as the publishers releasing board games. So some go through crowdfunding, some don't go through crowdfunding. Is there any particular tactic they're missing that they should be doing that others are using?
That's a tough one.
As a content creator, what is something that
like a tactic? I don't know. That's a tough question for content creators, because I feel that people who create content create it in a platform or in a modality that makes sense to them as a person. And it gives a lot of different variety for the consumer. So if content creators all were doing the same tactic, let's take short form videos like TikTok. That's super popular right now. But if that's the only content that was out there for consumption, that would get boring over time. So I think tactics, the variety of different tactics for content creators is crucial, because you're going to meet the needs of the consumers, which are all different. There's no right way to create content. And I love that there's so many different ways to consume board games.
Sure. I guess for that, if you're, as a content creator, you're looking to expand your viewers or listeners or whatever, the best way to start, or, even if you've been around for a while, is networking.
Yeah.
Getting to meet other content creators. Maybe there's a podcast or a YouTuber that you really like and you're at a con, reach out, say hey to them, start a relationship, or even, new people that are out there. Things always changing, right? So we're a podcast right now. Video is sort of the place to be. Everybody loves to watch videos. So, it's just networking while you're out there at conventions. And that's another reason for content creators, conventions are amazing, is that you can go out there and meet some other people. And a lot of publishers and stuff like that will do like media night. And that's a great place to go to meet, well, publishers for one, but also other people that are doing the same thing you're doing.
Yeah, it's a good point about the variety, isn't it, and keeping it fresh. And there's a psychological benefit to that as well, because what people may not realize in terms of looking at psychology of humans is we get bored quite easily. So it's right. And also we go through a change every 6 to 8 years. So if it's the same thing over that period of time and we don't actually make those changes to keep it fresh, then people will just take a disinterest to what that content is doing. So you're absolutely right. It's important to have variety as well, definitely, in what we're actually producing and seeing. Yeah. And another good point you made as well, Christina, is that you certainly do what you feel is right and what you are happy doing what you feel is fun as well, because that's important. If people can see that you're having fun and relaxing, then others are more likely to sit down and watch and enjoy that experience.
Yeah, if you're trying to like do what everyone else is doing because you think that's what's going to help grow your audience, but it doesn't feel authentic to you,
Good point.
it's not going to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say either for publishers or, game designers, just be who you are and be your authentic selves and just really transparent in what you're offering. And I think that will go along so much further than trying to be something that you're not.
Absolutely, yeah. Very good point indeed. So let's move on to our next question. So number 7. Okay, and I promise I have not flushed the fish down the toilet. This was actually on consuming alcohol, which yeah. So I'm sure I'll get into it at some point. What's the most common thing someone starting off in the content creator space looks?
So, as in, like, what's the first thing you want to do when you're creating new content?
I suppose, yeah, it's looking at when you're starting off, what is the common mistake maybe someone makes and you don't think about it at the start? Actually, I should have done that.
Yeah, that's your question.
Oh, I thought the last one was my question.
Oh,
We'll jump in this one. Let's
All right. So mistakes
or pitfalls.
I'm this is successful for some people. It's not necessarily a thing that I like, but you're familiar with the term clickbait, right? Like you put out some type of content, whether it be a video or or an audio or whatever, and it's designed to get people to click that thing.
The title is
like it's
it's like a flashy title or a catchy thing that you're like it initially hooks your curiosity to make you then listen to it.
Like Steffenfeld's done ? And it's basically he's done with this next game, right? But you think, oh my gosh, is he actually done? Click. I hate that. Yeah. It doesn't feel good as a consumer of content creators when people do that. It kind of makes me mad. But the thing at the same time, it does work, but it's just disingenuous. So I'd say that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
In my point of view, but to each their own.
Yeah, it's a good point. In marketing, they call it the hook, and that's what is the hook to hook that person in. And and the psychological effects of certain words affect certain emotions in people as well. So a very good marketer is very attuned to that. Will tell you use these words because that will make this type of emotion, and they will get more views and clicks by using this type of word. So all of that, yeah, you're right. And I've seen content creators create some clickbait titles. You click on the video, and it's nothing what you think it is, and it's you, and you think, I didn't click on that. That's not what this was about. So yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, definitely. I would recommend, obviously, actually taking a look at what's out there as well and seeing what works. Because I think that's. And then you're right about the authenticity and being true to yourself as well is really important, because eventually, if you're using clickbait a lot, people will tune off, and you won't get any views in the long run. So it's gain but long-term losses.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
So let's move on to number 8.
Which will be your question.
Okay. Or both of us.
Right. Okay. So which content creators do you watch most on YouTube?
On YouTube. Oh, well, I'll go first. So I watch a lot of Rodney over at Watch It Played because I really dislike reading a rule book. And if Rodney has a playthrough of it, I will go to him first and watch it because his videos are very easy to consume. They're clear, it's audible, it's very concrete in the way that he teaches the games. And I would prefer to do that versus read the rule book. So I consume probably the most Rodney Smith over at Watch It Played.
Man vs. Meeple put out a lot of fun content. They've got they get the first looks, and they've got where they just sort of the chit chat where they sit around and just banter about stuff or talk about news. David is a friend of ours, and
Did he pay you to say this
Yeah.
on that?
that check will be in the mail soon, I hope. If Rodney, just to kind of piggyback on Christina, if Rodney doesn't have a video on something, I also like Paul Grogan too.
Yeah,
He does some pretty
that's great.
solid reviews, and his teach is very like, all right, here are the rules, and now we're going to play them as we go, and he teaches his group, and so I consume it better that way, because sometimes people will teach you a game, but they're not, here's all the rules, right? With Paul Grogan stuff is he's actually teaching a group of people to play the game as they're playing it. So my mind works that way. So a shout out to Paul Grogan too. I think he does some good content in regards to rules teach and stuff of that nature.
Yeah, and I'll name one more. Jason Perez on YouTube does shelf stories, and he does a lot of commentary on just things that are happening in the industry as it relates to timely events. And so he's done some on getting burned out in the industry and what's that like. He and I have talked about mental health in the board game industry. So his content on YouTube is very much about less about reviews or rules or things like that, but it's more about just the life of the gaming industry. And he has some pretty good videos over on shelf stories.
Also, Mark Mia, he has some fun content too. Is that Board Game Coffee?
Yeah,
that's fun content too.
Yeah,
so there's a bunch.
Certainly, Rodney is probably king of how to play videos. I mean, they are so crisp, aren't they? And so well done. I can't imagine how many takes that must go through to get it so perfect every time. And yeah, it's brilliant.
I imagine that he does one take, right? Has to be one take.
No. What that, what he starts, he goes, we're going to review, and he flips that box. Sometimes he hits himself in the face with that box. He's like, no, I can't use that one. I want to see all the bloopers of him trying to throw that box around.
Yeah. It would be human if it was that perfect, would he? So, every time. No, he's brilliant. And you're right. Paul Grogan does some fantastic how to play videos as well. And there's a lot of great stuff out there, isn't there? And it's I'm sure one day I'll get asked the same question. I won't reveal it yet in terms of what I watch on YouTube and most content creators, but I probably hog the YouTube, and I actually get told off by the children sick to death of watching board game content on YouTube. So my list would be long. So let's move on to the next one. Okay, so we've got a couple left to go. Right, okay. So is there anything new or different you would like to see board game designers start doing?
Board game designers start doing?
I like, board games designers. I mean, my instinct for this is to say more app integration. So, right now, especially with campaign style games, there's a lot of that. But, or like a Mansions of Madness, they integrated the app in there, and that's really fun, right? But I would like to see that. I'd like to see designers work that into a Euro, right? Like, I don't even know if that's possible, but maybe you could, with the board game setup, one of the best things I love in a game, one of my favorite things is something called the reveal. And that's when all the pieces are put on the board, and maybe it's got some modular setup, or maybe, it's a deck of cards, and these are all the win conditions, or these are in-game scoring, right? And they're different every time, or they're, somehow different. I like to see that reveal. Maybe that could be incorporated with an app, or something of that regard,
Maybe like using technology in a different way.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that's a good answer.
I'm trying to think of anything else a designer could do that I'd want to see them do a little more. I don't know. There's already so much. The breadth and depth of the places designers go is, I love when we see something we haven't seen before. So I guess what I would love to see is game designers think about something outside of the box that hasn't been done before. What's the new die? What's the new card?
I don't know.
What's the new thing?
New whatever.
Right.
Yeah. So I want to see that innovation.
It's quite interesting because we just recently finished a video recording on looking at the top 10 future board games and what that would look like. And we actually covered apps and all different forms of AI, which we will put the link in the description down below so people can check that out. And it was interesting having a look and the research into that. And there's some great, I won't spoil it, there's some great concepts that people have tried to introduce you into the gaming world that some might not be aware of. And I'm not a fan, I'm going to be honest, I'm not a fan of using my phone or an app to play a board game. And I suppose we're all different. And I'm one of these individuals. I'm sure people would have a similar view of me, completely disagree with me, and think I'm talking rockers. I prefer to touch the board game and feel have that feel of playing the game there, not going on my phone. I want to get rid of that.
Sure.
That some games is a necessity to have an assisted app, particularly if you think about games where you have to flip through a book to get clues. You don't want to spoil that by seeing other clues. So sometimes the app helps to keep that secret and tension going. And so when apps introduce it that way, that's important. And I think that is a great introduction. I'm just not a fan of perhaps apps that take it a little bit too far. I think more than 50% of that app is being used, and I'm using 40% for the actual game experience. So I think that's where you can get into muddy waters and perhaps takes away from that gaming experience. But everyone's different. Some people love it and they immerse themselves in using technology to assist them playing the game. That's fine. I have no problems with that. You just won't see me with a phone next to my board.
You say it now, it could be the future. Like 15 years from now, you're going to be like, where's the phone? How are we going to set this game up? So you never know. You got to be open.
I thought the future was going to be holographic. I remember in 1993 when I went to an arcade and it was based on Quantum Leap, the first arcade machine I played. I thought, wow, this is amazing. I put my hand through it. It was just epic, and I thought, this is the future. Never heard of it ever since. So we'll see. So we're on to our final and last question.
Okay,
let's give this a shuffle. There we go. So number 10. Okay, well, I suppose this links into perhaps one of our previous questions. So when you started off, is there anything you wish you had done differently when you started off?
Wow, done differently. I know for me, when I listen back to our original episodes, I know. Oh, sorry, we got dogs.
We got dogs, and so now they're all upset.
Okay. When we started out, and I go back and I listen to our original episodes, some of the commentary I said as a female seemed very derogatory to other female gamers.
Right.
And so I think what I wish I would have done when I started would have been a little more open-minded to all of the gaming breadth and depth that there is, and not so much of falling into the trap of making, tropes or, the commentary of like, oh, hide your games from your wife because she'll be mad if she sees another game you bought. Like, that's not fair to make that commentary or those judgments. So I feel like I wish I would have been less judgmental, I think, when we started out.
Yeah. One of the things also, I'm going to piggyback on that too, is when we first started, so the original concept was two gaming couples, we first said it was like two gamers and their sometimes reluctant wives, right? So we set it up off the start of just having sort of that trope of, oh, my husband's going to buy another board game again. I guess I'll play with him, And so when we started off, the format was the co-founder Patrick and I, and we would talk for the majority of it. And then when we got to the deep dive, we had our spouses or partners come in and also talk. And we did that for about 10 episodes. And we were one of the first podcasts that had ever done that. And people were like, they came on like, hey, we love what you're doing, but can you have the ladies on for the entire time? Like, why is it that they're just there? And we immediately switched and we were better for it. Yeah. And I wish that I had the foresight at that time. It's like off the start, let's do that. So we've grown as a
Yeah.
podcast, since then. But we kind of acknowledged that pretty early on and changed it. And I can't imagine us doing anything else.
Yeah. And I think too, if you're starting out, being open to feedback, whether that you're a content creator, a game developer, or a publisher, like if someone's telling you, hey, we really like this, but maybe you change it a little bit or make it more like this, like be open to being flexible. I mean, that's what got us here, I think, is
Yeah.
being able to change and just adapt and listen to our consumers of what they said they wanted more of.
And we still do that today.
Yeah, we still do that today, and that's been very beneficial. Not just for us, but I think for the content that we put out, it's just better.
Yeah, and it's important to listen to the customers. They're the ones that are listening, and they're the ones that are clicking on and downloading those, the podcast. So it's important to take that feedback on board. If 20 people are saying, I like this and I don't like this, well,
oh yeah. Yeah, you can't please everybody.
Right.
I think that's the other thing. Like you have to be open to that if you're putting yourself out there. And again, whether it's your first game design that you're putting out there, or you're opening a gaming company, or you've created a new content channel, like people are going to love it and people are going to have opinions about it, but you just have to maintain your authenticity of who you are and what you want to do and just keep going.
Absolutely. Never give up. Give it a good go, definitely. And listen, feedback, definitely. So important. Well, that brings us to the end. I'd just like to say a big thank you to our guests, Christina and Rob from the Blue Pen Pink podcast. And I hope I said that correctly because that's a tongue twister, especially after the So, just before we finish off, if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing to the channel and hit that like button. Also, leave a comment down below. Any particular highlights from today's show that you enjoyed, and perhaps there's some questions you'd like us to ask our guests in the future, wherever it might be. Please do get involved, and we will leave all the links in the description down below so you can check them out. And that brings us then to a big thank you for watching. You've been watching I was going to say the podcast. You haven't been watching the podcast. You've been watching Bonkers. So, take care.